And welcome back. I'm Levi.
I'm Jacoby.
And I'm Joe.
And this is The Thought Vessel. Welcome to the show. And today we're going to be talking about life.
Oh, man. Well, on that topic, what's the worst advice that you've ever gotten for your life?
I mean, I was going to follow up, but damn, I guess we're jumping right in.
Yeah.
Joe out here looking at us
Look,
on the diving board of the pool, not even taking a second to look us over and be like, hey, look at this dive bomb. Crash.
look, it's already a change in what we're doing. We didn't have the nice little, we're talking about life. I'm Levi. I'm Jacoby. I'm Joe. No,
Man, you straight ray gunned that intro.
You know what I do?
Joe, unadapting to change? Wild.
Like my shirt says, I am cringe, but I am free.
Because they can read your shirt.
Yeah,
On this
that's
audio
why I
only podcast.
said that on the audio podcast.
Alrighty, so let's think here. We got some bad life advice, eh? That's what we're thinking here.
Starting out with some bad life advice. Because I think it can be kind of hard, especially like when you're a kid. You kind of learn to kind of trust the adults and what they tell you to do. And then when you grow up, you're like, that actually was trash. That was a terrible thing. That was a terrible piece of advice.
How could you do this to
Like,
me?
when you scuffed your knee, you rub some dirt on it. Like,
I made my mistakes.
remember like the whole like rub some dirt on it when you were a kid
I don't
with
think,
like a wound? Like, yeah, super duper. Make sure you get an infection.
I don't think I got that advice. I think I heard that from like cartoons primarily. Never from my parents.
I don't remember cartoons ever saying that.
Usually it's one of those characters that would say that kind of line. Just
Rub
like,
some dirt on it.
walk it off. Legs broken all over the place. Walk it off.
Shin at a whole 90-degree angle.
Oy.
Rub some dirt on it. But I think that was the whole, basically the whole just trying to like instill toughness. Like I had football coaches that used to tell us that, but like when you're your first year in football and like you get hit a few times, like, ow, that actually hurts, versus like you kind of have to just kind of tell your body to ignore that it's going to get hit in a contact sport and then just kind of deal with it. So I understand it, but putting dirt on an open wound is a terrible idea.
It's absolutely a terrible idea.
Maybe I was the kid that did end up rubbing dirt on it. Yes, I have lupus, and that was an extremely awful idea.
Whew.
But I was the kid who actually was like, okay, well, I guess if they're telling me this is what I should do. Because I was ignorant at one point. I was a child. Just.
So I guess as far as the worst advice you heard kind of growing up, or you just knew that it was a terrible idea, who wants to start?
So I had a friend a long while ago. Don't really keep in touch. Kind of an asshole, really.
It happens.
Well, yeah, specifically, he would be very talk out of one side of his mouth and mean a different thing, or just straight up lie to get the way that he wanted. And he was like, okay, so this company is going to be life changing. And if you come with me to this seminar, we can really make something of ourselves. He brought me to a pyramid scheme. He brought me to a straight pyramid scheme.
Was this in college?
It was after college. But
There you
go.
There you go. Was it the You Should Be Here vacation one?
No, it was for an energy drink.
Oh, that's terrible.
You can make a pyramid scheme out of any product.
Oh, yeah. I remember I had a friend who was selling energy drinks like that in high school. I'm like, how did you get a high schooler to do a pyramid scheme? Like, how is that not just super duper illegal?
Because pyramid schemes have to be investigated.
Yeah. Multi-level marketing.
Man, what's that multi-level? Does it form into a kind of pyramid shape?
And like on top of that, it's like, tell your friends and tell your friends. I think they said like if you double like 14 or 15 times, you cover the entire earth.
Jesus.
Like it's a terrible business model. I think it was like by 4 or whatever, but still ridiculous.
It's got a pointy tip. Surely it can't fail.
I'm not going to go there. I'm just not. Nope.
Not even you are that cringe, eh?
It's not even cringe. Like, it sent me on a spiral of just like, but wait, it's pointed. That would feel good.
That was a great little 5 seconds there for the audio recording.
Yeah.
All right.
Making me say it.
Jacoby, you're up next.
Aw, I wanted to go last. Well, let's see here. Well, I guess I am going last because you went with dirt on the knee, right? Or did you?
That
not?
was just a generic example.
If my uncle could hear you now saying the word generic. Shout out, Kai. There's a joke about it. I'll tell you later.
Okay.
You don't get to hear that, audience.
Yeah.
That's
No.
only for us.
A future story for you to crave later. Anyways, don't make it weird.
It's impossible right now. It is
difficult not to.
It's already weird.
You don't crave stories? What's wrong with you?
I crave the stories.
It's like that one lady that she's like, I think I'm pregnant. Just like, how do you think you're pregnant? Because I'm craving stuff I normally don't do.
Oh my God.
Like water.
Like water.
Bitch, I think you're just thirsty.
The true adult drink, water.
But I mean, what word would you have used?
I don't think I would have said craved a story.
Oh, but you don't have a fucking answer, do you?
Maybe like something to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Like
used
a
someone to look
lame-
forward to on the podcast before.
It's got stories. It's what podcasts crave.
Y'all are some twisted. I'm not going
I
to
got
say
the
the
Brian
word.
Thirstmulator. I got that.
Anyways, life lessons that were terrible, eh? Bad life advice. Yeah, okay. We're going to go with the age-old, it'll be just fine. Just do it.
Just do it. It'll be fine.
Go after Nike, why don't you?
Mm-hmm. I was under a car with my father at one point, and we were putting together a oil container on the actual like oil receptacle or whatever.
Like the oil pan.
Not the oil pan, the actual like thing attached to the car. I was putting the bolts back in. I looked at him like, hey, this bolt's not going in. To which his response is, just do it. It'll be fine. Little kid me went, okay. And I put my feet on the edge of the car and I ripped that bolt into like an entire half. Unsalvageable bolt.
Okay. One thing that you really never want to do, just do it, is when you're working with like heavy machinery.
Uh-huh. And you know what's really sad? That's the only advice I have to get on most of the times I go to a job with mechanicals is just do it. That's what people say. It's like, hey, we're making this multi-million-dollar CNC router machine jig. Just get it done. Just do it. It's like, okay, but if I do this, don't worry about it. Just do it. Oh, what's that? It's broken and doesn't work? Imagine that. Just doing it doesn't work.
Man, that must have been the motto of Boeing currently. Because that is, in fact, the same goddamn mentality.
Boeing. It'll work until it doesn't.
And then all of the planes crash.
That in and of itself, considering how many times I've flown on Boeing, it's just terrifying.
Well, they've even started switching out the planes at the airport. Like, most of the time when I've been doing a lot of my air travel to, like, different places, recently to LA, none of that was on a Boeing because the companies do not trust them right now because they have had a record of just having the planes not even just fall out of the sky, but have, like, monumental errors, like the sides of the plane being burst out from it and still flying. It's crazy how bad it is.
Sure brings the light of day to that one Simpsons episode where they're all grown up and Lisa has to fly air and it's just Mad Max, the plane.
Yeah.
Random story here. I went with my cousin to go see the Mad Max Fury Road, the one with Tom Hardy, not the most recent one that came out. And I was like, man, I have to go to the bathroom. I'll wait for this chase scene to end before I go. That was the entire movie. Like, I had no idea.
Get there, bud.
Yeah. So I was like, after like 45 minutes, I'm like, this is still going. This is insane. Because like, it was just something that was in theaters. I was like, I'll just go see it. Why not? I'll just try it out. I had no clue. That was terrible.
Mad Max and a chase scene. Couldn't be me.
All right, hit me with it, Levi.
What's that bad life advice?
I think for me, it was I'm not working there anymore. My first commission job I had, after teaching, it was just kind of more of a sales role. And the amount of people just like, that would just give you the advice, like, you need to put your work before your family. You need to skip out on some holidays or miss some baseball games if you want to be successful. And the more I've been in this side of the world, because I'm not working there anymore, because what it turns out, if you want all of your employees to work 100 plus hours a week and get paid not a whole lot of money to do it, it's not a very good model for success.
Yeah. Also, different people have definitions of success.
That makes me sick to my stomach just hearing it.
But yeah, like it's for me, like I'm a very family oriented person. Like I'm getting married here. By the time this recording comes out, I will have been married. So I'll have the new missus officially. And we're all very excited for it. But there are things that are more important than your 9 to 5. So I don't think that missing baseball games and stuff is what's going to be the important thing. And a company, if it's profitable for them to do so, is going to fire you on the spot and replace you. Your family's never going to be like, I'm glad you missed all those baseball games for us.
It's never a good workout strategy I'm going to sacrifice this so that I am financially successful, which means that my family can be okay. They are going to notice that you're not there, and it is not going to work out the way that you want it to.
Like
It's a mentality for people of the older ages. Like, it's something that I hear a lot from people in the 70s and older category. And it also resonates with the just put your nose to the grindstone.
Yeah.
Like same vibe, different wording, but I can't stand that.
It's a double-edged sword, and I get that because as humans, like we do live in a society in which everyone kind of pitches in. So being in a role or something that can help positively help the people around you does have value. But I think like I don't really see myself as my vocation. Like I see myself as a husband, hopefully a future father someday, somebody that can provide value to the people in like my own family, in my community, and my friends. And like I also do this for my work, being more on the financial side of things, and I can use my knowledge to help people. But back in kind of the more boomer generation, we had pensions. Like if you worked for this company for like 30 to 40 years, what have you, then they would pay you for the rest of your life. Like that type of retirement package is kind of few and far between these days. Like there's not as much loyalty anymore, and companies are going to do what they can to stay afloat, and they can replace you like that. So it's harder to have loyalty for a company when everyone and everything is expendable.
And we definitely don't live in a day and age where companies feel like loyalty is something you deserve. I've been in a lot of companies that used to preach loyalty, and they were the ones that were the first to discard people. Like they use it as a means to attack you.
Always be very suspicious of companies that say loyalty because, like you said, they're going to be the first to drop you. The drop of the hat, especially if it is within their financial interest, because they will use loyalty as a crutch for themselves to get people into what they need you to do. And if that's no longer profitable, oh, did we say loyalty? I meant no. Please leave.
Well, on a different note here, we're going to be jumping into our main topic. We're going to be talking about life advice, some actual good life advice, things that we might use in our everyday lives, but that also have some tie or could be used in the context of Commander. So what we're going to do for this episode is we're just going to be going, around the horn, everyone sharing one, and we'll kind of talk about them a little bit. So we'll just do the order, Joe, Jacoby, myself, and just go round and round. We're not doing a snake draft style or anything like that. We're not trying to steal each other's. We're just kind of...
It goes round and round and round and round.
You spin me right round, baby, right round, like a life advice, right round, round, round.
I hate you all so much.
I'm sorry. You invited us here.
I stand by it.
My brother in podcast. You asked for this.
My brother in podcast. This was your idea.
It'll make me
Well,
regret
this
my
was
decisions.
our idea, but still, this was your idea.
Yeah, it was in fact your idea. You asked me to be here.
I stand by it. I hate all.
And this is why we're groomsmen.
And this is why I give a speech at his wedding one day.
One day. It's coming up fast.
Yeah.
It's coming up really quick, but it's a singular day.
All right. Joe, you want to kick us off here?
Yes, and I'm going to be invoking one of the more powerful ones that has been in pop culture. This one is for all the Trekkies. It is possible to make no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life.
Very nice.
This is basically saying, hey, sometimes you get dealt the shitty hand. The shitty hand could be in a game of Magic or a game of life. You can still do the best you can with what you are dealt and not win. It is not a reflection on you as a person or your character that sometimes the odds were just not in your favor.
And I think, that's an excellent one. I think it can be kind of difficult because in life, let's just say it's a promotion at work you're going for, and there's 10 other people. Well, guess what? That's a 1 versus 9 right now. You're trying to win. And by you getting that promotion, you're telling 9 other people no. And they also might be just as qualified as you, just as educated, whatever it might be. And they just had to pick one person. Like, life isn't inherently fair. There are times in which you're going to do everything you possibly could have done, and you just lose.
And it's not a reflection of the character of the person across from you that they were dealt something better. You can't be externally mad at someone's character because they just were dealt something a little bit better than yours. It's not like unless they were cheating, obviously, it's not like they were out to be like, aha, I'm just going to beat you at everything. Or, the malicious intent, perceived or otherwise, is not guaranteed because someone got dealt a better hand than you. Sometimes they just have to do the thing that they're going to do, which will lead them to victory because we're all trying to strive for victory. And in Commander, when we strive for victory, unfortunately, just like Levi's example, there can't be more than one winner usually.
I mean, the odds are, in fact, against you.
There's like a usual point. I'm going to say like 0.1% because people do still try to do their everybody draws win conditions, but that doesn't mean that's going to win all the time. It, in fact, means that it's going to win much less of the time because other people are like, I don't want to draw. I'm going to kill you first.
And then additionally with that, like, technically speaking, that's a stalemate.
And despite all of that, you can still be friends with people who do things that are against your own mottos. You don't have to sit here and think that, oh, just because he wins all the time, that means we can't really be friendly outside the game or in the game, because that's just silly.
Basically, the heart of this is that never really take a loss to heart. Sometimes nothing that you could have done and you did the best you could. You are still valued.
And I mean, Commander and in life is a bit of a game of variance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I recently won a game of Commander because I attacked with some artifact creatures and drew into a Cyclonic Rift. And if I didn't do that, my opponent had 80 creatures on the field. There was no chance I was going to survive. I just so happened to draw the right board wipe at the right time that helped me survive and win through attrition.
Yeah, literally last night on a stream, I got the literal god pulls back to back because I pulled off after they were playing the Wise Mothman and we were doing our mill things. And it was after I milled 4 cards that I drew for my next turn Carter Doomscourge to make the last 2 opponents that I have attack each other. One of them was absolutely going to kill because the Wise Mothman not only had flying and trample, but was currently a 24/24.
Yeah, that'd do it.
Yeah, I'll get there.
And it was at that point where it was like, okay, now this next card, I just needed it to be a land because I had Ingaruk's Wake and only 8 lands. Literally milled another 4 after playing the Carter land. Got there, won the game at 3 life because I was able to keep all of my creatures and swing in after he had just gained 23 life off of the Lily Bow and the Radiated Grandma.
Sure.
Because it wasn't an upgraded Wise Mothman. So I was like, oh shit, went to 29 life. What am I gonna do? Ingaruk's Wake and big creatures.
Yeah. And I mean, your opponent had the right strategy in play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they knew what to do. It's just sometimes your opponent just happens to draw the perfect card in that moment, and there's not much you can do about it. In competitive Magic, sometimes it's just you just get a really bad matchup for you. Or your opponent just got that sideboarded hate piece card and it got into play, and there's not much you can do about it. Like, I don't think you should use it as an excuse to not do anything about it. Like, if you're losing a game, like, sometimes there's no reason for it. Sometimes, like, hey, maybe there's something I could look into upgrading, or maybe there's something like a weakness in my deck that I'm not seeing.
It's not like we're playing tic-tac-toe where you could just neither side win because everybody knows that you only have a 9 square grid. Sometimes you will just reach the inevitable conclusion.
Or I always hate when you are playing a game and you get down to like 3 people with massive board state and zone board wipes, and like I attack one person and then I die to the other person, or if I attack them, I die to the third person. And
So
if I
on
do
and so
nothing, I get killed. Like,
Yeah, that battle cruiser magic.
like that. Those are always the worst games. I'm like, do I just pass or do I just pick who kills me? Like, this is awful.
Yeah, battle cruiser magic can be pretty bad.
Although there needs to at least be one of them.
That's
in my opinion, in a game, because somebody's got to make people move. And this big old cat that just got a bunch of steroids begs you to hurry up.
Yeah, I think the problem with it is, like with Battlecruiser, is that it makes
Jetmir.
Crater Hoof
No.
so good
Is a Robin.
because like you just get to a point that everyone has these boards that no one can swing in on until someone gets their Crater Hoof effect or whatever it might be to trample in and kill everybody. At that point, that's no better than Thoracle combo win because you're just playing around until you can get the thing. It's a slower Thoracle.
I think
considered,
one battle cruiser. I didn't say everyone be battle cruiser.
Yeah.
That's lame. Everyone being Thoracle is the same amount of lame.
Well, that's CDH, but
Same amount
Not
of
every
lame.
CDH deck. Don't, it's not every CDH deck. Don't you look at me like that.
anyone that's running blue-black,
Shut up.
Alrighty, shall we
don't
continue?
boo me, I'm right.
Boo. Boo.
All right, well,
Yeah,
Jacoby,
we-
you're on the horn.
Alrighty. Again, another one reference to my uncle here, and this is some of the best life advice I've ever received. It's a great plan. It can't fail twice.
It's a great plan. It can't fail twice.
Mm-hmm.
Please elaborate.
So, in a lot of situations, you have this great, elaborate plan, and you go to interact it, and then it blows up in your face because either someone has the right interaction, or you go to do something different, like in life, where you create a plan of action, you go to execute it, and no matter how great that plan is, there's always a chance for failure. Failure is an inevitable possibility. You can't avoid that it exists. You just can do the best you can to circumvent it. Just because your plan fails does not make it bad. You can have great plans that do not succeed. In the same strain, like Picard was saying in Joe's quote, just because a plan is great does not mean it's foolproof. And just because your plan fails does not make it bad.
Yeah, it goes to one of the oldest quotes that I know of. Man plans, God laughs.
This turn of phrase, at least for me, came about when we were playing Dungeons and Dragons. And one of the things that had happened was he created a scenario that adventurers had already done once. He duplicated a previous encounter for this scenario that I had already been a part of. And both times I presented the exact same plan. The first time it failed horrifically. The second time it succeeded stupendously.
Stupendously. Getting that thesaurus out on the podcast.
I have a great vocabulary. Leave me alone. It's used very improperly, but yes. But like I said, it can be a great plan. It can't fail twice.
I mean,
That's the phrase. That's
yeah,
what I'm
the
saying.
phrase is it can't, like, obviously it can fail twice because sometimes,
You can plan as good as you want. Sometimes it just spits in your face. That is what it is. But
Yeah.
but the point of the turn of phrase is that just because you can't get the plan to succeed 100% of the time does not make it a bad plan.
but like the outside of that, the immediate thought process was like, let's just take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else. It's like, yeah, that plan probably could work one time. It's probably not going to work every time.
Well, no, but still, like the spirit of intent is just as important as making sure what you do is, right?
Yeah.
So every time you're not going to come up with every unique plan under the sun, just like sometimes your great ideas don't bear fruit.
And it's also a good idea to say sometimes it's just variance. Your plan could, in fact, win in other scenarios where it could fail in others. Because, as you literally just said, the plan did work at one point and failed at another. It's variance. Never assume that the plan was just doomed from the start.
All right, I'll go on to mine here. So I've got a few of them that I kind of use on a daily basis, but I'll start with an Albert Einstein quote. It is, "We cannot solve problems with the kind of thinking we employed when we came up with them." So this is the idea that a cringier version of this would be the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Man, crazy. I was about to say the same thing with that last one.
But I think you...
Love you, Jacoby.
My advice was great. Screw you.
We love each other here, except me. I hate all of you. Except the listeners. You guys are great. This is effectively the idea of if there's something broken with a strategy or plan, especially in the world. Like, for example, I was a teacher. I wasn't happy. Part of me could have said, hey, let me just get to year 17 or whatever it is. Maybe that'll be the good year for me to do it. But I only have a certain number of years professionally and on this earth. I don't want to waste any more time doing something that's not making me happy. So I went and tried to find something different to employ. In Commander, it might be a deck that is just not functioning the way I want to. Instead of just trying to just push it harder or leaning into that strategy, maybe I need to adjust and try something different. Maybe it's a different commander going into different colors, or just changing the core of the deck, adding more draw or taking some draw out for more ramp. It just really depends on what it is, I think. But switching up your ideas on things can help resolve a problem versus just kind of like stubbornly pushing your way through things.
Not everything needs an axe. Not every problem is solved with a chainsaw.
It goes to a different quote. If you only use a hammer, you will see every problem as a nail.
That's a good one too.
Sometimes, and not every solution has to be extraordinarily creative. You don't have to come up with the next wheel. Sometimes overcomplicating it is not the answer.
Okay, but what about Wheel 2.0?
Or Wheel 1, which has functioned and fixed the problem before, might answer the solution next time.
I don't know. The Wheel 2.0, I've seen it on the cars. They kind of make it so that it can drive sideways. It's just a sphere.
Yeah, and sometimes when you go on a beach, airless tires is the solution, and not having Wheel 2.0.
Well, that is still Wheel 2.0. It's just a different kind of wheel.
I mean, technically in that context, Wheel 1.0 was made out of stone.
We're on.
So we just skipped like 30 generations of tire.
Yeah, we're currently on tire 267 or something like that, or Wheel 267.
Remember when we were on topic and we had a coherent thought?
You brought me into this.
I missed those days. All right, Joe, you're up.
Coherency, what's that?
So in that same strain of trying to get to learning that you may not be happy in that one situation to do that, your education is never complete. It's important to learn new things. Even if it is not anything new about the world, it could be new about yourself. That new thing about yourself could be, I didn't like teaching and I don't think that it was going to get better by the 17th year. I'm going to try something else. It could be, I don't technically like this strategy that I thought I would love. I'm going to switch that up to a different commander and try a different strategy that I might like better. It could be, I'm trying to learn this new deck and you're just finding out that, hey, this card interacts this way. It could be any amount of things, but it's important that you just never stop learning, because once you stop learning, you become a little stagnant. You limit your worldview. You look at the world in one particular lens, and it is going back to that if you only have a hammer, every problem is a nail. And that is only going to hurt you in the long run.
I think with that, in my days of academia, because like there was a teacher's pension, so you had kind of like a definitive idea of like what someone's like quote unquote finish line might be. In North Carolina, the magic number was 30 years. Could be a little bit earlier depending on what age you were getting into and if you banked your paid time off and stuff like that. But you could tell because we can kind of know like how long you were going to continue to teach. So like a teacher with like 24 years in, you could really tell what kind of a teacher they were, because like I had teachers that I worked with that were very open to learning new ideas and concepts, and they were very much trying to figure out the most efficient way to teach their classes in the now. And there were some teachers that had that attitude of, I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't need to learn anything new. And then they would struggle because they didn't understand the new wave of technology or children behavior. Like the pandemic threw everything on its head as far as, what teaching was like. But being able to be open to that education is just so important if you want to succeed in things.
Literally, when you said I've been teaching for 20 years, it reminded me of an episode of Scrubs with Dick Van Dyke, if either of you remember that one.
I don't recall if I watched that one.
Dick Van Dyke came in for just this one episode as one of the fun doctors, able to do like a whole bunch of good bedside manner, able to be like really good with his patients, but he had the fault that he never learned anything new. And when it came time to do a procedure for a patient, he used old medical knowledge, which was to the detriment of the patient. I believe it actually resulted in that patient's death in the episode. And it made him lose his license to practice medicine because the patient died and he never chose to learn something new, like the antithesis of him in the episode, which was Bob, the medical director of the hospital.
Good old Bob.
And he specifically went out and learned new things to keep up with the most current thing in medicine so that that didn't happen. And it was a real come to Jesus moment where it was just, I chose not to learn something that was going to help patients, and it killed someone.
That could be a tough lesson to learn, but most of us don't live in the that high of a stakes environment.
Voice acting, IT doesn't really do that. Most I get is just, please just learn the 2-factor authentication. It is literally for your safety, please.
No.
God, mother.
Ha!
You're really trying to make it easier on you with the editing, but it's not going to work. All right. Jacoby, you're up.
Most of mine come kind of in a silly wrapper, but they're a bit fun. We're going to dive right into this next one, which is your objective might lack whimsy, but your life does not. Sometimes you interact with people and you discover that the things they like to do are extraordinarily mundane or extremely based, but not as adventurous as you find the person. The same is said in reverse when you walk into a game of Magic. Some people play really boring, something you find mind-numbingly dull. That does not make the person you are interacting with dull. You don't know them. And you should use the game as a means to, despite what they have at the table, get to actually bring in the human element, conversate. If what they're doing is boring, do not use it as a means to judge their character. Use it as a means to judge their taste.
Yeah, some people do play very banal decks.
But the person who plays them is probably really interesting. And it's not always.
Until you talk with them, and then you find out they're just as boring as their decks.
Yeah, well, a case in point, I'm going to use Levi as my example here. Levi likes to play a lot of decks that have answers. They do stacks. They're very taxing as a theme. Who would have guessed, right? But Levi, the person, if you ever interact with him, is a very generous person, very comfortable to talk to most of the time. Someone you could really engage with intellectually, that a style like that does not portray exactly. Most people don't view stacks as an intellectual way to be.
No, I just view him as a jackass. Most times, even outside the game, sometimes just be a jackass.
But case in point, not every interaction you're going to have in our game, in our world, where we're all bringing together these slivers of cardboard with text and pictures, are always personality defining. Every chaos gremlin is not going to be person that I dislike, just a deck archetype I dislike. Just if someone brings something you hate, it's not the person you hate, it's the deck you hate, unless the person is just straight up an asshole. That's different.
And
obviously.
You scoop on them.
You scoop on them, yes. Assholes get scooped on.
I think a part of it too kind of goes to color theory as how it defines the personalities versus how mechanically it works. So for me, it aligns where I am very big into community and constantly improving intellectually, trying to be a student of life. But in the game of Magic, Blue-White is very, we're going to shut things down. That is what we're going to do. We're going to slow everyone down to the pace that I'm comfortable with, and I'm going to win because I've brought a rowboat to the track.
Basically, it is not so much that you're slowing everything down. You're, in fact, being a teacher in life. You're just teaching them, parry this, scrub.
The same can be said in reverse. Just because someone has a very interesting, colorful, woo deck, it's all rogues at a party, doesn't mean that that person is inherently great or fun at parties.
It goes into the theory of the puppy and beer with people. Have either of you heard about this?
No.
All right. So it is a breakdown of 4 different kinds of people. Would you trust this person to take care of a dog, or would you have a beer with them? If they are incapable of doing neither, don't associate with them because one, they're not responsible to take care of a very harmless thing, and they're not fun to drink with.
Puppies are a lot.
If they are able to take care of a puppy but not able to have a beer with, yeah, they're very responsible, but they're probably going to be a little bit dull. If they are able to have a beer with you, but you wouldn't trust them to have a puppy, yeah, they're absolutely fun. And that's probably all you want to do with that because they're not going to be responsible. If they are able to do both, is in that I want this person in my life because not only are they responsible, they're fun. I feel it goes into that a lot because it's hidden that, well, not everybody's upbeat and peppy, but not everybody is responsible, blah, blah, blah.
And just a last little tidbit before I pass the conch on to Levi. You never seen a conch? It's like a horn. It's got a tasty meal
You
inside.
never heard of Lord of
One
the
or
Flies?
two in a locker room, maybe.
But
No,
you've
a conch, you weirdo.
yeah, but you've never seen Lord of the Flies? It's the speaking conch.
Okay.
Anyways,
Also equivalent to talking stick. How about that? You know that?
Talking stick's great.
gas-powered stick. I'll just pass it
Okay.
over.
I have the talking stick, metaphorically. Just holding it right here.
Don't make me get one.
We've decided it is the conch. You must respect the conch.
Mine's in Florida. I can't hand you a conch.
So I'm going to move on here. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to do one actually from my family. Those who neglect their gifts lose them. We see it as the plants that you water are going to grow. If it is a hobby or interest that you like, if you leave it alone or you don't cultivate it, like you're going to get worse at it. If you give more time to it, you're going to get better at it, which can be very frustrating if you have a lot of hobbies and interests like myself, because you just don't know what to dedicate your time to because you can't be an expert in everything. So you do have to kind of decide what you want to let fall to the wayside, what you want to be just kind of good in, and what you want to kind of be more of an expert in. For example, we had a friend who liked to play a lot of Magic, but they would only play once every month or so, and they never really kept up with any of the new cards. And the only time they would buy anything is to tell them like, hey, this card that came out would be really good for your deck. And then whenever we'd play, because everyone else was more aware of what was going on, they were constantly working on their decks and tweaking, like they didn't have much of a chance to win because they just weren't putting any time or effort into it. So, and in life too, like you have to decide what you're going to be good at because you can't be good at everything. You can have like general skill, but as far as like getting to that next echelon of talent, it requires work. That's why when you see a lot of people that are on the higher end of things, usually they're a little bit more deviated in other directions. Like there's a lot of people that are grandmasters in chess that might be a bit more socially awkward because they are a single track mind. All they do is play chess to be as talented as they possibly can.
Yeah, and this also breaks down in Magic as well because not everybody's going to be a great deck builder, but they could be a great player and vice versa.
Yeah, we, especially in our community, we run into a lot of you're not good at one, you're great at the other. It's not very often I see a competent deck builder who is also a really competent player. And you can be good at both and then great at one of them instead. Like Levi is a good deck builder and a good player. However, there will be often times where you're a greater deck builder than a player in the sense that like sometimes we have to clarify some rules on card interaction that Joe and I might know because we look for wacky card interaction, but it's not just inherent to you. And that doesn't make you a bad player, but it's like the level of self-information that we had to gather changes how we function as players. And I am a worse deck builder than I am a player because I get so one-track minded. I like build a theme and I really like that theme and I could pilot it with much excellence, but I can't build it with any of the same criteria.
Whereas I'm just trash. Fair. One of the important things, especially with this, and plants you water are the ones that will grow, is a very good metaphor for if you want to get better at the thing that you think that you're failing at, the important thing is to do it more. If you want to get better at deck building, do more deck building. Challenge yourself with deck building. If you want to get better at playing the game, play with more people. Get more reps in with the deck. It's why a lot of CDH players don't do what I do and just keep changing decks every 2 weeks. They stick to a deck and they play it for months, even years, just to make sure that they know exactly what to do in each situation, so that it cuts down on times where they need to think and like it, didn't 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 like it.
For your lilies, not your dandelions. If you want to play casual, don't focus on are going to generate the fun you're seeking, not the competitive nature you don't want. Or if you seek out that information, don't bring something that you aren't sure could work to something you want to be surefire.
Also with EDH top 16 and stuff for CDH decks and looking at decks that have done well in tournaments, like take it a little bit with a grain of salt, because a lot of the choices that they might be making in deck building are teching against stuff they're anticipating to see in the tournament. If you're not going to run against a Krark and Thrasios Storm deck and it's not in your local meta and you're not planning on going to a tournament, maybe you don't need to accommodate for that as much. If I know I'm going to be going against like Slicers and Winotas all day, I might be focusing more on some creature removal than I would about just dealing with something on the stack. You have to tailor it a little bit to what you're expecting to see.
I feel kind of called out here. You just listed all my decks.
Well, they're popular around here.
Stop being aggro.
No.
Man, that's on you then. Get teched on.
Listen, just because you guys want to be passive does not mean I don't want the game to end here right now.
Look, I live in the mid-range hell. That's where I thrive. It's why we've already established Levi's control, I'm mid-range, you're aggro. You go in there.
Which CDH does make me sad right now, because like control and stacks aren't as viable as they used to be. It's more just like everything's mid-range or you have some turbo. You know, you don't see a whole lot of like super duper stacks doing well in tournaments or even on your local CDH anymore, outside of a couple players.
It was always going to tend towards the middle, especially since people would get better at interaction and know when to interact. So it was not always going to be everybody loses on turn 2 versus the stacks player who really, really wants the game to go very, very long.
But it's also kind of chasing the dragon, because you can't double and triple down hating certain effects. And there's 3 players. And like if I'm going against a Magda player, a Krark and Thrasios, and then a blue farm, like that is 3 entirely different strategies that I need to be ready for. And it is very hard to control out 3 players at the same time. Plus, they also have a ton of stack interaction and spot removal and things that they can deal with too. So It is a losing battle to try to play controller stacks in Commander. It's one that you can win, but it is tough.
People take a long time to understand how that control works. That's one that you really need to be dedicated to. If like learning aggro is watering the lilies, if mid-range is maybe getting a like plant that you would grow for like food, control in stacks is like trying to grow a tree.
No, it's like growing roses.
I haven't grown roses. Are they notoriously hard?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. They are like roses.
So roses are temperature sensitive, water sensitive, and soil sensitive, pH specifically.
Oh, that makes sense.
If you alter the pH, they die. If you water them too much, they die. You water them too little, they die. You put them in too much heat, they die. It gets too cold, they die. And it's like a range that's very thin on certain kinds of roses.
Drives me nuts, because like I will have all these problems, and yet like weeds will still grow in between my sidewalk.
Because the weeds are like, yo, this piece of ground? Hell yeah. We're growing.
Insane. And I try so hard to grow grass, but it's like kind of in a shaded area, so it doesn't get enough sunlight. It's terrible.
Sometimes you gotta have, like, they're like, oh man, I just want this 1 pH.
So on my last life lesson that I would like to present to you all, both my co-host and listeners, is a nice physics rule. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. But since this is life, and we've known that there are times in which the consequence of an action can be blown out of proportion or way muted than it should be, it is just important to say every action has a consequence. That way it's not giving it any kind of scale. And it is important to note that everything that you do has a consequence, whether that's good, bad, a big consequence, a little consequence. Everything that you do will have something happen after you do it.
Apologies to our friends with anxiety that are listening to this show.
I'm sitting right here, buddy.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
It's
The
true.
an-
It's
the
just
an-
very
The
very
anxiety is not going to fight that. You're going to do something, whether that is nothing at all, and the consequence being that nothing is being interacted with, which means that it's not happening anyway, or you go out there and do something and learn more from whatever you're doing, or making like a positive impact, a negative impact. Whatever you do will have a consequence. It's just a fact at this point. But that same thing happens in Magic as well. Every choice that you make in Magic will help, hurt. It's just important to know that if you do nothing, nothing happens.
or something will happen. But
Something will happen, which is if you do nothing, your that's playing with you is just like, I think it's time to just find a new person to play with. Don't seem to be doing anything in the game at all.
or they just keep beating you up with that Llanowar elves. Put them on that 40 turn clock.
Basically, it's important not to be scared that every action has a consequence. It's just to understand that when you do A, B happens. Or when you do A, there's a possibility that B or C could happen. It's just a fact of life that something will happen when you do something. It's the simplest thing that can be said, and it's why it was grounded into movement physics by Sir Isaac Newton. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
And
Fair
I
enough.
think definitely applicable in Commander as far as politics are concerned. Like if you say like, hey, if you don't attack me, I won't attack you, and then you break your word, the next time you play, or if it's a smaller knit playgroup community, I usually give someone one chance. If they back out on a deal, like those are off the table for you now.
Mhm.
Like you don't get politics. Like if you're about to die and it might behoove me to keep you alive, I might just let you die.
But on like a more positive note, if you gave them, they noticed that, they could even help you into a better position, which may help you win. Usually a lot of our deals are not going to be like, hey, don't win. But if you upheld your deal, they upheld their deal, everybody comes out positive, at least between that deal, and you can take that to win.
Which we are in an age of politics that most of the deals are we need to gang up and kill this guy for the most part. Like there are a few exceptions. Like occasionally it's like oh, can I swing at you with a 1/1? I need a Tim to trigger to draw a card. Then it's like, okay, what do I get in return for the 1/1? I don't come at you with an 8/8. Seems fair.
Yeah.
But in other contexts, because like you really need to be able to hold the end of the deal, because if it's bad enough in a board state that you need to take out someone, it's a 3-on-1, like you need to make sure everyone's on the same page, because you can't be swinging out and then be taking like 5, 6, 7 chip damage from player number 3 because he needs to get professional face breaker trigger and you're open or something like that.
Now, that being said, I have been able to get that.
Jacoby, your last life lesson.
My last life lesson is it's all batteries.
It's all batteries.
It's all batteries. So anything you do in life is a battery. Every single thing you do. Any experience you have when you go to an event, you play a game, you play a sport, there are negatives and positives that must exist for you to understand what is going on. Everything's a circuit. You cannot have only positive experiences with something and say you truly know it. You can't have only negative context and develop an opinion that's bulletproof. You have to experience positives and negatives in anything you do to truly get to know what you're doing, and they help you grow and generate a charge. In Magic, I say and preach and preach and preach, do everything, experience everything, because when you do so, you generate negative and positive experiences. You find out what you don't like, the negative charge to your game. You find out what you love, the positive charge, and it formulates you as a player to function whether you experience those negatives or positives as you keep going. You're going to usually get a little bit of both no matter what you do in life, and you're going to get a little bit of both in Commander. There's not going to always be a solid table where everyone's doing everything you've ever loved. It's very unlikely because we all have such different tastes. But if you treat it like a battery, you got to understand that you got to take the positives with the negatives. Sometimes it's a little off and it generates a bad battery, heats your stuff up. and you got to take it out. You get heated, you pick up, you'll walk away from the table because you got too much of a type of charge. Sometimes it's important to remember that you do need a little bit of both.
Gotta just close that circuit.
Another good example is in our thing, axe throwing. Sometimes your throws are perfect, sometimes they're not. You got to change a little bit. You got to work your stance or you're not being exactly the same. The positive interaction of getting it right strengthens when you make those negatives to adjust a very keen adjustment. Oh, it's like a half inch rather than, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. The negative mess up generates data you put in, lets you formulate a better opinion. You go, oh, I know last time that I was a half inch off. This is what I had to do. And now we fixed it.
Yeah, that's why I went NPC man the last time we went axe throwing. And it worked so many times. It's like, yeah, I'm just having this wide stance. My arms are like this. Yeah.
Or another great example is work-life balance. Work is never going to be all sunshines and rainbows. It's not really possible because life can get in the way. Life is a fundamental factor. We all live it, and it's important. And sometimes work is not going to be positive. It's going to be negative. But there will be times that it is positive, and you have to filtrate those experiences. The negatives become learning. The positives also become learning, but different parts of the whole circuit you have to interact with. You can't just let all the negative drown it out and then have a working circuit. It doesn't work.
Versus also just work being work. Most times people just don't want to be there anyway because there's not many people who truthfully want to be at work all the time, but they use the positive experiences of going home, being with their family, experiencing things outside of work to complete that circuit and balance out. It is going back to the quintessential work sucks. I know. She left me roses by the stairs. Surprises let me know she cares.
Say it ain't so.
I will not go. Turn the lights up. Carry me home.
All right, Levi, what's your last one for the night?
Well, there's one thing I did want to add to that as well, is I think that we see this a little bit with people who are in situations that they're about to retire, especially with those who retire early, where you don't have that negative work component in your life anymore, and it's just positives. But I think at some point when you bring up your pleasure threshold to the point like, oh, every day I get to go to the shop and I get to play Magic or I can do my gardening, and like you're turning a lot of your hobbies and interests into like your new chores and work, and you start draining the excitement out of it because you need more and more to satisfy you. So I think that's why you see a lot of people that retire like will get like a part-time job, or they'll just go back to work full-time, or like in some situations you'll have people that get to retirement years, they don't really have much of a purpose in their life anymore, and they just kind of die a couple of years afterwards. It's sad to see, but it happens a lot.
Coming up on the 6 months of my mom's retirement, and she has not talked about getting a new job just yet. So it's probably going to be around a year.
That's what it was for my mom. She retired, did about a year. My mom and my dad both. They were ministers preaching as pastors, and they went up here, and the running joke was they didn't find a church they liked, so they made their own. They took over very quarter time. So the only thing they do is pretty much just kind of preach on Sundays. The church is very small, handles everything else on their own. And they get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and they get kind of that sense of purpose. I think you have to have something that may not be your favorite thing in the world, but is a positive contribution to those around you in order to let yourself enjoy the downtime.
Especially since once you only fill your life with those positives, the downtime between those kind of becomes the negative because you're just like, this is so boring.
Yeah, that's
somehow you got to complete the circuit. It's all batteries.
Definitely a good point with the positive and negatives there.
All right, take us home, Levi.
So I've got a couple different options here. So I've got some ones that I had as backups.
Oh, okay, but choose one.
Doing all of them at the same time. I think for me is, and there's kind of a couple that kind of get into this as well, but I'll go with Alexander Graham Bell. Before anything else, preparation is the key to success. Going into something and knowing what it is you're trying to do or accomplish can make it a lot easier on you and yourself when you're trying to succeed. Whether it's going into work, having a plan for what you want to do today so you don't get lost in random tasks, then kind of failing, or looking at playtesting decks before you actually get a chance to use them, like actually getting the deck built out before you actually, assemble things and buying stuff online, or understanding, oh, this deck is running short on card draw. So I might need to slow play a little bit or add more card draw to compensate. Like building a foundation of preparation in the things you do so you can be more intentional with what you're doing in the moment versus kind of taking your lumps and learning along the way. Having that time of preparation, I think, is essential if you're wanting to succeed, whether it's personal or professional.
I think that's fair.
Especially with just the preparing for the inevitable, or going into a different phrase, failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
And I guess the other side of it as well is if the Sun Tzu Art of War, like if you know your enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles, where you need to know kind of what you need to do. And then also your outside, maybe not in your control variables of, oh, I know that in my meta, it's a lot of like creature centric combat. So like if I'm playing a deck that isn't running a lot of creatures that can block, I might just get pelted out of the game before I get to do anything at the slightest sign of like a Rhystic Study or anything. So you had to be prepared for what your opponents might do, but also really know your core strategy. Because like if I give someone a deck to borrow and they're like new in the game, they're going to lose that game because they might have like a general idea of what everyone else is doing. But if you don't know at your core what you're trying to do in order to win, it is incredibly difficult to pull off a victory.
Technique with no form is just as bad as form with no technique. You can be gifted and still come extremely short because you didn't actually formulate a plan. You can be well planned, but if you have no finesse with what you're doing, sometimes it's not enough. It's good to plan. It's good to understand your plan and how it translates into what you're doing. Planning for your capabilities, not only being capable of planning.
You still got to scream when you throw that shot put.
You don't,
Or hammer.
you can't plan for jumping 30 feet if you can't jump 30 feet. You can plan all you want, but if you're incapable of following through your plan, your planning is irrelevant.
You never know. I might make a nat 20.
If you look me in my eyes and flip a card and say Swords to Plowshares without revealing the Swords to Plowshares and putting it in your graveyard because you don't have it, I'm sorry, no.
Persuasion check. I made a nat 1. Damn.
Yeah, I was about to say, go ahead. Tell me a natural 20. It fails.
Yeah.
Your check DC was higher.
Yeah. You cannot, in fact, crit fail or crit succeed on skill checks.
That's a DM decision thing, and I hate to tell you, your 20 plus 5 does still not, no matter how nice that 20 looks, does not beat my DC 30.
Gotta just be a bard.
Well, that is the end of the line here as far as the life advice. So we're going to be kind of wrapping things up here. If this is a podcast that you enjoyed, please let us know. This is obviously a little bit different than what we normally do, but I thought it was a topic that we would enjoy covering, and hopefully you do as well. Be sure to share with your friends. You know, the podcast, we definitely want to grow and continue to find a bigger audience here. And then give us a little bit of love as far as some reviews. I'm on Facebook or Twitter or Spotify.
Yeah, especially since this was the first time we did everything in technically one take.
And on top of that, if you get to listen in and you feel like interacting, give us some of your life advice. Something that really helped in the same format that this might have helped. Anything interesting to add to the conversation would be wonderful on Twitter.
I would absolutely love to see some of the different life advice we've heard out there and just kind of see what that would definitely look like. Yeah, I'm sure there's some joke ones too. Like, what's some life advice that applies to your life and in the game?
Yeah,
lands in front.
Don't be a shit.
Don't fuck up.
Always put your lands in front. Assert dominance.
Jesus Christ.
He can't save you.
Literally just go out, live life, learn. New experiences are your best friend. Even our anxiety-ridden folks.
Don't stare at him like that.
It's like putting your lands up front and it asserts dominance.
I want you to know, you are the reason I enjoy Armageddon. Because like the 2 times of Armageddon, a person who did that, I just looked at them and they're like, what? And I just started like scooping their lands together in a pile. I'm like, here, let me get that for you. Because they put them in my reach. So I'm just like scooting them towards each other and just like, here you go.
I would still look at you dead in your eyes as you did it. Your Armageddon has no power over me.
Here you go. And I just hand you a pile of your lands.
That's all the time we have. I'm Levi,
I'm Jacoby.
And I'm Joe.
and this was the Thought Vessel. Happy.
Take care.
Bye.